What's up, guys? It is IRGT85, and there's a couple stories that I want to cover from yesterday that I just didn't have a chance to cover yet, so we're going to talk about them today. We're going to talk a little bit about Square Enix's presentation. I said I didn't want to make a dedicated video on it, and I'm not going to make a dedicated video on it, but I do want to mention a few things from it. We have some surprise Nintendo Switch game announcements coming out of yesterday as well that you'll definitely be very interested in. But first off, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update on a story that we actually talked about yesterday, and that, of course, was the GameStop and new Nintendo Switch situation. So GameStop basically put out their weekly ad, and within their weekly ad, they were talking about trading towards a new Nintendo Switch system. And a lot of people started to get a little bit goo goo gaga over this. Is this new Nintendo Switch revision, the Nintendo Switch Pro that we've heard about? Obviously, when you look at how Nintendo has named things before in the past, the system being called a new Nintendo Switch is something that it could potentially be with the new Nintendo 3DS. Now, a lot of people were hung up on the fact that the word new in the word new Nintendo Switch was capitalized with an N, and that's sort of where all of this stemmed from. Now, if you watched my video on it yesterday, which I suggest you do, I pretty much came to the conclusion that I felt this was much ado about nothing. I mean, it was kind of interesting. Why was the N capitalized? That was the one thing that was sort of holding me back, but maybe that's just how GameStop talks about their stuff when they're talking about new systems. I couldn't really find any sort of information or previous flyers or weekly ads that showcase GameStop talking about a new system with a capital or lowercase n. Well, someone by the name of King Avery the Great, who I follow on Twitter, actually did find some information, and now I'm not necessarily second guessing myself, but I do think it is worth talking about. So you can see here we have a picture from 2014 based on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One when these systems were, of course, new to the marketplace. 50% extra credit when you trade any system towards a new PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, but that N is not capitalized here, people. That N is not capitalized. Now, going back to the Nintendo 3DS situation, he found something where you got $100 credit when you trade your Nintendo 2DS, 3DS, or 3DS XL or Vita towards the purchase of the new Nintendo 3DS XL, and you can see that the word new is capitalized because that was the name of the system. We've also had Amazon and Best Buy listings that said new Nintendo Switch with a capital N, and people just thought, oh, you know, whatever, it's just a mistake or anything like that. But right here with the whole N situation, a lowercase n versus a capital N, like, this is the whole thing that a lot of people are holding on to. Do I think that GameStop is talking about a new Nintendo Switch? Not necessarily. You know, I just can't get behind it fully, even though there is some interesting stuff behind it. I do think that the system exists. I think that we will end up seeing the system sooner rather than later, but I don't think that this is any indication of that, even though this N situation, you know, the capital versus lowercase, like, I don't know, man. I just don't know. What do you think about it, though? Are you leaning more towards what I'm thinking, that this is just, you know, maybe the ad person who put together the weekly flyer just put a random capital N in there because, I don't know, maybe he sucks at his job and doesn't know the English language? Or is there something more to it? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Next up, obviously, I've been covering a lot of E3 stuff here on the channel. I've done videos for pretty much every major presentation, but yesterday I skipped out on a video, and that was Square Enix. And a lot of people were looking forward to my thoughts on Square Enix, and I felt like I sort of disappointed them, but I didn't want to do like a dedicated video because it just made me feel nothing. And I've never had a presentation make me feel nothing before. Like, I can usually be happy or angry or just sort of middle of the road, but with this, I just felt nothing because it was just the most bizarre thing in the world. Like, what the hell are you doing with this shit, Square Enix? Like, I'm not going to go over all the games that they showed or anything like that, but I am going to talk about a few of them. Babylon's Fall. What is this game? This game looks like it was picked out of the Xbox 360 era in terms of color palette and character designs and stuff like that. This is a Platinum Games game, you know, the company that makes Bayonetta, Astral Chain, Nier. Like, Platinum Games is known for over-the-top action games, and this just looks like a boring, plotting game that just has no real direction or anything like that. Like, I hope this was Platinum Games' D team that is working on this game, because it's just lacking any sort of personality, which Platinum Games games are known for. This sort of personality, whether you agree with the and like the game style is one thing, but this game just lacks any sort of character direction, any sort of interesting elements, any sort of personality, and it's a live service game. This is a games as a service game. Like, Platinum Games are sort of known for, like, when you buy the game, like, you're getting the complete game. Sure, they might do an updated version down the road, but realistically speaking, you're getting a complete package. A live service game from Platinum Games, this is what you've been working on for 3+ years? I don't know, this game just looked completely disappointing. Final Fantasy Origin, the Stranger of Paradise game. Like, once again, all right, you got to remember, this game is talking about Final Fantasy. It does not look like a Final Fantasy game, but obviously it's sort of a spin-off game. But this is a spin-off game of Final Fantasy's origins, as in Final Fantasy 1. Have you ever played Final Fantasy 1? Newsflash, the characters look nothing like they did in Final Fantasy 1. If it's supposed to be taking place within that sort of timeline, like, who are these characters? They look like random guys that you just picked up from like TJ Maxx or something like that. Like, I don't know. The gameplay does look pretty decent. I will give the game that. But once again, you have these drab environments, you have these drab colors and whatnot. I think Koei Tecmo is doing a good job on the gameplay side of things, but where's that Japanese feeling to it? Where's that whole RPG feeling to it? It doesn't look anything like a Final Fantasy game. It doesn't give me a Final Fantasy feeling whatsoever, and like, that's just a very, very weird thing to me. I will say that the game looks better than Babylon's Tower, but that's really not saying all that much. It's a 2022 game as well. I just don't know. There's the mobile stuff. What mobile gamers are watching E3? Like, E3 is for the dedicated video game audience. It's for like that hardcore video game audience. Why are you spending so much time on mobile stuff? This feels like a Bethesda Presser where they like to talk about their weird mobile stuff and whatnot. Like, Final Fantasy, you're doing Final Fantasy 1 through 6, okay? You are doing a Final Fantasy 1 through 6 collection for mobile devices in Steam. You're not putting this on consoles. Are you out of your mind, Square Enix? Have you lost your marbles? Do you not know that people want this on consoles? Maybe the Japanese audience would like this on a mobile device because mobile gaming is very popular there, but you're at E3. You're at E3. You're supposed to be talking about video games for video game consoles because that is your hardcore segment that is watching this presentation. Where are all your RPGs during this presentation? Why are you showing me Guardians of the Galaxy and Life is Strange? You know what I sort of got from this presentation? It wasn't necessarily a feeling or anything like that, more of just an observation. This felt like a very Western design presentation. Guardians of the Galaxy, all of these games like Babylon's Fall, and of course the Final Fantasy Origin game, which have very drab colors. Life is Strange, once again, of course, because everyone loves Life is Strange. Like, you went completely away from what companies and people know you for, and that's the JRPG stuff. You didn't talk about any sort of RPGs during this, like, whatsoever, unless it was a spin-off game or a mobile game. Just a horrible, horrible presentation. You could say that this presentation was just as bad as the Ubisoft one, but I could potentially say this was worse than the Ubisoft one, because at least with the Ubisoft one, it invoked some emotions from you. Like, this one, it was just bizarre. It was like, who put this together? Whoever put this presentation together should be fired from Square Enix, because they don't understand why people are interested in the company. They don't understand why people have been following Square Enix. You're an RPG company. You could do other stuff, but at the end of the day, you are known for your RPGs. If you want to do Western stuff, throw in some Tomb Raider in there. Like, people like Tomb Raider, but no, this is the presentation you went with. Just absolutely disappointing, absolutely disgusting. And yes, I said it didn't really invoke any emotions in me, and I don't know, maybe it did. Maybe I just needed to sleep on it. But yeah, what did you think of the Square Enix presentation? Let me know in the comments down below. And finally, amidst all of the Xbox stuff that we got yesterday, there were actually two games that were talked about during the Xbox presentation, which I really enjoyed. Make sure you guys go check out that video after watching this one, that are actually coming to the Nintendo Switch, and they're kind of surprising to me. The first game that we're going to talk about is Diablo 2 Resurrected. Now, this of course was shown for the Xbox Series X with up to 4K graphics, 8-player online co-op, but this game will also be coming to the Nintendo Switch as well on September 23rd. Now, I dabbled in Diablo 1 way back in the day. I played Diablo 3 on the Nintendo Switch, but I never played Diablo 2, and I did like what I saw from this game. I just didn't know if I would get around to playing it, but I think it is very interesting. Now, obviously, the Nintendo Switch version of the game isn't going to have things like 4K graphics, but I do think this game will be very successful and popular on the system. Diablo 3 did very, very well on the Nintendo Switch, and considering that this version is coming day and date with the other versions of the game, is definitely a very positive thing with this version of the game. So yes, if you are a Diablo fan or a fan of the Diablo style of games, Diablo 2 Resurrected is coming to the Nintendo Switch on September 23rd. So once again, we have another big third-party game coming to the platform. And the second game we're going to talk about is once again a big third-party game that a lot of people missed out that this is coming to the Nintendo Switch, and that is A Plague Tale Requiem, which is the sequel to A Plague Tale Innocence. Now, this game was shown for the Xbox Series X, and when you watch the trailer for this game, it definitely felt like a game that would not come to the Nintendo Switch. Now, this is a 2022 game. Obviously, it's being optimized for the Xbox Series X. It is also coming out on the PlayStation 5. So how does the Nintendo Switch version of this game fit in? Well, If you know anything about the company making it, you would know that they have brought us 2 games on the Nintendo Switch thus far, with Hitman 3 and Control. And what's the sort of thing that both of those games share in common? They were cloud-based versions of the game. Now, this is something that I've talked about for quite a while. Is cloud-based gaming the future of the Nintendo Switch? I don't necessarily think it is the complete future of the system, but I do think it is a part of the future of the Nintendo Switch, because companies are going to want to put their games on one of the fastest selling systems and best selling systems of all time. And if you can't do it natively, if you can do a cloud version of the game, at least that's sort of a way to put the game on the system. Now, I covered Hitman 3 cloud version on the Nintendo Switch in a video. You know, it was okay. It was functional. For me, I'm going to want to play a Plaguetale Requiem on the Xbox Series X. It is going to be a Game Pass game as well. So I have Game Pass, so I'll be able to pick that game up, because I think that this sort of stealth style of game is going to be better played in a native thing. But if they could figure out how to make the controls and everything work and the graphics look good, I think the Nintendo Switch version of this game could be a very viable version of the game. It's going to be very interesting to see. Maybe I'll check out both versions of the game side by side, but definitely some surprising announcements for new Nintendo Switch games that I thought you guys might be interested in. Alrighty, so that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know what you think of everything in the comments section down below. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel. Capcom is doing a presentation today. I don't know if I'll be back for a Capcom video, because just from what I've heard, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that good of a presentation, but if there are some good surprises there, I will be back with a video later today. Of course, tomorrow, Nintendo Direct, there's going to be a million things to talk about, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel with your notifications turned on, and as always, guys, I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.